So, Charlotte, what are we eating this time?
Well, we have, and I'll be honest, we've been tucking into it already, fish and chips.
This was my suggestion, wasn't it? My favourite summer dish.
Yet, and we have come all the way to Brighton because, of course, as everyone knows, fish and chips taste better when you're by the sea.
Absolutely, beside the sea. So here we are in Brighton, and more precisely, we're overlooking the sort of shingle beach, isn't it, and the pier. But we're in Sealades, which is this beautiful outdoor swimming pool complex, which is almost on the beach. If you know the sort of miniature railway that goes across, we're sandwiched between the miniature railway and a sort of lovely shingle beach.
It's great. It's sort of got everything. It's got that swimming pool. It's even got some traffic going past as well. That's obviously the problem with being at the seaside is we've got the sound of the waves in the background, the sound of the seagulls, which have been in to filch all of our food already, and also sort of a construction project of some sort going on right by this lovely little cabin we're in, right by the sea.
Yeah, I mean, I must say I've been living in Brighton for quite a long time, and it does seem to be permanently under construction down this end of the seafront, so I'm not sure if it's ever going to end, but hopefully not long.
That's a good sign, isn't it?
Sign of the booming economy.
Yeah. You've got everything from, I can see sports therapy, there's some sort of yoga class going on, and then a bar. And guess which one of those we've gone to?
We might get the odd seagull diving down, and the seagull already dived down and stole one of the sausages.
Yes, so we have no saveloy, we just have fish and chips. But what we do have is a lovely guest with us today.
Yes.
Whittering on about our saveloy that we lost to the local seagull.
That is a classic Brighton tradition, is losing food to a seagull. So you are now inducted to Brighton.
Well, Sophie Taverner, thank you so much for joining us. You're a local chef, but tell us a bit more about you and what brings you to the point you're here today.
I've been a chef for about 10 years. I moved to Brighton a couple of years ago to take up a head chef gig at a restaurant called Lost in the Lanes. They were at the cusp of launching dinners and opening all sorts of new things. So I spent a couple of years with them, kind of getting my feet into the Brighton restaurant scene. And now I am freelancing, actually, just kind of helping out a few different restaurants and currently doing a series of wine-focused dinners throughout the summer.
Brilliant.
At the lovely Shoreline Kitchens over in Hove, where we've picked 4 different wine regions, and each month we do a different menu to kind of match up with the wines. So, yeah.
But you're also award-winning. I noticed you've won an award for the best lunch in Brighton.
That was last year, when I was at Lost, we managed to get on the Bravo's Best Lunch in Brighton award, which was really, it was a really fun achievement.
And what's your view on wine at lunch?
Always. What's the point of lunch without wine?
Well, because you were working in Spain, weren't you? So that, as we all know, in Spain, wine is just part of the table.
It's the big piece. No, it's absolutely 100%. Yeah, you would not ever dream of sitting down to a long Spanish lunch without a bottle of wine on the table. So it's definitely part of it.
And that's something I feel we've lost a little. Or hopefully, we've taken things from Europe and we've given things to Europe. But hopefully, that's one thing I hope we would take from Europe instead, or the continent.
Yes.
Is that idea of just enjoying a glass or half a glass at lunch. I'm on a campaign to get it all back into the Tides canteen.
Lots more local families where I used to live were making their own wine as well. So that's another. Maybe we can start doing a bit more of that in the local town.
Well, here in Sussex, we're surrounded by
masses of wine producers.
Yeah, huge amounts of vineyards. Right, Charlotte. So, fish and chips.
Fish and chips. So
they're getting cold.
We are getting cold. We better start tucking it up. So we got these fish and chips. They smell amazing. They taste amazing.
What was your first introduction to fish and chips? Can you both remember when yours to go first?
I think so. I don't know what my first introduction was, but there was a real phase where my mum every Friday after I left school used to take me to the local fish and chip shop, which is called the Rainbow Fish Bar. And I was vegetarian at this point. I was vegetarian until I was about 19. So it was just a big plate of chips, and that would be my dinner with a lot of mayonnaise on a Friday night, which makes her sound like a terrible parent, but it made me so happy. And I just remember probably the only chips I'd had been sort of oven chips, or there'd been chips in the school canteen. And just thinking, these chips were so sweet. That's the kind of enduring thing, but they were so soft in the middle as well. And it was just an entirely different food. I think there are so many bad chips out there in the world. And there is something quite special about the fish and chip shop chip. And then on the other hand, of course, you've got the kind of pub triple cooked chips. You've got the same haute cuisine chip, and everyone's trying to do the best one. But I don't know, I sort of think the fish and chip shop chip is the original and the best.
Yeah,
really.
absolutely. And how about you, Sophie? Did you grow up?
Down here, well, probably actually. I've sort of spent quite a lot of my childhood in Brighton. So, yeah, cold slightly wet from the sea, wrapped in a big towel, and then hot fish and chips to try and get you warmed up again. Probably from quite young, actually, yeah.
See, I
Lots of vinegar.
Lots of vinegar. I was stick thin as a child. And we used to always holiday in Cornwall in a place called Loo, where we had all the flats. And we used to drive from Berkshire, where my parents were farmers. And we used to arrive on the Friday night. So we'd always go to Captain Pengelly's Fish and Chip Shack. You're still there. It's a little wooden shack owned by the Pengelly family. And we'd have these enormous fish and chips, because Mum and Dad wouldn't want to cook on a Friday night, or the night we arrived. And I always remember struggling through them, thinking how enormous they were.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until sort of later in life that I really sort of started seeing the charm of an outdoor fish. And I think they should have be eaten outdoor chips.
I quite often, I don't really approve of getting a Sunday roast at a pub or a restaurant, because I always think you can do the Sunday roast better at home, because you know how crispy your potatoes will be and stuff like that. So I often get the fish and chips, which is the only other thing on the menu, and it's never that good.
It's not the same.
It's not the same, exactly.
You need it to be
yeah.
absolutely drenched in vinegar.
Yes.
Slightly soggy on paper. Otherwise, it doesn't really count.
Ducking and diving from the
Seagulls.
seagulls.
Well, look, we've got a few sort of dips inside. Dips, that's a very fancy word for what it is we're about to, condiments. And I want to have a big debate about what are the right accompaniments of fish and chips. But we are a wine podcast, and I think we should probably at least pour the first glass of wine before I derail us terribly.
So the genesis of this idea was I wrote a column about what to eat with fish and chips, bang in the middle of summer. And it was one of my most popular columns online. And there are a few sort of certain principles, because as you can imagine, I've eaten a lot of fish and chips in my life. And it's whether you're having fish and chips. So I used to, when I was living in Pimlico, we'd take them home. This is a bit sacrilege. And you could have them on a plate, but take away fish and chips with a big salad. And I quite like the scruffy salad, because the salad acts like the wine should, and it cuts through.
Fair.
But the big principle is you don't need to worry about the chips, as Charlotte was saying. The chips sort of go with anything. It's the batter and the saltiness of the batter and the vinegar on the batter which causes the problem. But essentially you want something cool, crisp, with lots of vitality and high acidity to cut through that sort of onslaught of salt, vinegar and fat. And the most decadent, I mean, crikey, this is end of the Republic, where Republic is champagne. But because we're in Sussex, the sort of home of English sparkling wine, one could say, we're going to start with a glass of English sparkling wine.
Amazing.
And this is the Harrow and Hope Brut Reserve, number 8. Actually, this isn't made, it's local to England, of course, but it's made up in Buckinghamshire, near where I live, overlooking the Thames village of Marlow.
Lovely.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I just think there's nothing more decadent than fish and chips and fizz, but it goes really well, especially it's slightly overcast today. Let's have a mouthful of this.
With our fish and chips.
Oh, that cuts through really nicely, doesn't it? Slightly fruitier than usually.
Slightly more apple character.
Yes.
This is like biting into a Granny Smith's apple, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit.
Sophie, you go
I've got to
ahead.
get in the fish.
Sophie and I are sharing. And I'm just
But I've eaten about half of my fish and we're only 10 minutes in. I feel
I'm
quite
not bothered
bothered.
I'm going to be all delicate about it.
because I'm going to
Not
go
true
through
to
this.
person, yeah.
And that's great, Will. Because it's a complete contrast to the kind of, well, I don't want to say oiliness of the batter, because it's not oily, that's unfair, but the stickiness and the sort of crispy originates with it, yeah.
It is quite. It's got some but actually it's quite good. I quite like it. It's got some depth to it. I'm liking the tartar sauce as well. Tartar sauce and champagne seems to be quite a nice combination. I'm enjoying it.
Previous. But also, doesn't this remind you, Sophie, when you're back in Spain, of tapas? You know, this is essentially a little tapas, isn't it? A little bit of fried fish.
Oh yeah, and also cava would be like what you'd be having.
Exactly.
Like little cups of cava was quite a standard thing to have with your fish, though.
So the English wine is probably more, as Charlotte said, it's got more appley green fruit than cava. Cava is made in the same way, but different grape variety. It always has a bit more savouriness,
Okay.
bit more earthy, which I like.
Yeah, I do too.
You're absolutely right. Cava gets a very bad rap. That's that is a.
I think I always prefer it to Prosecco, though. I think, Prosecco could be a bit sweet to me.
Can be, yeah.
You just mentioned the tartar sauce there. So we've got with us today tartar sauce, ketchup, and some mushy peas. Where does that fit for you both in the sort of league, I suppose, the ranking of what can go with fish and chips?
I love a cheap tartar sauce. No, and not too fancy. The sort of cheaper and sugarier, the better. For me.
How about you, Will?
I've changed my opinion. So this is quite obvious, but I actually feel as I get older, I just like salt and vinegar on my fish and chips. I don't even like mushy peas.
Interesting.
And I quite like the salad because it soaks up the fat.
I'm going to make a pitch for curry sauce, which is quite a full-on flavour, and I think would make the pairing question even harder to contend with. But I just think it's majestic. I think it's such a unique flavour, isn't it? It doesn't taste like any actual curry that exists in the world.
But where have you had that, Charlotte? In Scotland?
It's more of a Northern England thing. My mum is from Manchester, so I think that might be where I sort of picked it up initially. But you can sort of get it at most fish and chip shops anywhere now. It's the globalisation of fish and chips, I suppose. We say as well, so we're having cod, but haddock would be the sort of northern version of this in fish and chip shops, and that literally just comes down to there's more haddock in the North Sea, there's more cod round about where we are now. There are some regional variants. There's chippy sauce as well, which is your neck of the woods.
I don't know what chippy sauce is.
I used to live in Edinburgh, and we used to have, when we were undergraduates there, you'd go into a chippy and you're after chips, and they said sauce and sauce, and it was like a sweet brown sauce, a bit like HP, but a bit sweeter. But where I used to live in sort of near Leith in New Haven, we've got a pigeon. It's actually not a seafood.
Defending our chips from the pigeon.
But do you think you should eat them with your fingers?
I think
or your fork?
I quite like the little wooden fork.
Yeah.
We've got the little wooden fork as well. We've got full size.
Definitely not a real fork, and I'm going to put my foot down and I'm putting it on a plate.
Yeah.
I don't think that's acceptable.
Well, there's some amazing facts, isn't there, Charlotte?
Yes.
What is it? The Brits eat more than 160 million portions of fish and chips a year, according to UK fisheries.
That doesn't surprise me.
That's a lot, isn't it?
What is that? That's more than one. That's more than two per person in the UK every year, which feels about right. Actually, that's quite low. So everyone's having fish and chips twice a year, every man, woman, and child. I think we should be pushing that up a bit further.
Our first fish and chip shop opened in Oldham, so Lancashire, in 1860.
Well, so there's a lot of debate about this because there's one in London at around the same time as well that's also claims to be the first fish and chip shop. Yeah. But it does seem to have been broadly that sort of historical era that we're talking about. And what it seems to have been is this big wave of Jewish migration in the 16th century from Spain and from Portugal. And they brought with them the fried fish that they were eating at home.
Yes. Which brings us on to our second wine, which is from Spain.
Oh, excellent. There we go. It's all worked out well.
It's the grape variety that's really in fashion at the moment. So one of the most successful commercial grape varieties in the world after Chardonnay is Sauvignon Blanc. Everyone likes Sauvignon Blanc. Do you sell that in the...
Yeah, most restaurants, you've got to have it on, otherwise it starts to kick on.
And so everyone's asking, what's the new Sauvignon Blanc? And there's a grape variety called Albariño.
Delicious. I love an Albariño.
Yeah, so this is a 2023 Heredad Chavarri. And
yum.
So we're in that sort of wild Atlantic coast of northwest Iberia, sort of the top far northwest of Spain, which is becoming increasingly fashionable.
Yeah.
And I always say, we think of Spain as the naturally. I mean, you're on the island of Ibiza, weren't you? You think
sunshine and 100%. But the north is very different. It's much more like the UK, actually.
Well, yeah, so it's got much more in common with say Wales or Ireland.
Yeah,
incredibly wet, incredibly green, sort of mountainous.
And it's such a different cuisine up there as well, because
lots more like beans and
lots more sort of preserved fish and other foods. Well, probably because their climate is more like ours, so you don't have the sort of glorious sunshine of the Mediterranean.
Things to warm you up.
And the Albariño grape has thick skins, lovely floral aromatics. So it's got lots of sort of interest on the aromatics, like Sauvignon Blanc from the Southern Hemisphere, from New Zealand, say. But that tangy texture on the finish. But there's also, I think, much more of a peachy element to that. I mean, that's quite a fruity.
It is quite.
And we've got some mushy peas, and it might go well with the mushy peas.
I was just going to say, I've just had a mouthful of that, and That's great because the mushy peas are so smooth and I want to say kind of bright, but that's an odd description for mushy peas. But these ones are very lovely.
Fluorescent in colour, maybe.
Again, fresh is the one word because they're not. Fresh is the wrong word because they're not fresh, so to speak. There is a sort of a bounciness to them, and that goes very nicely with that wine. I like that a
And
lot.
a very dry, sort of saline aftertaste.
Is there a red wine in the world that you would consider putting with fish and chips, or if that's sort of beyond the pale to your instincts?
Well, you want something very light, wouldn't you? What do you?
I'm quite a recent convert to the light chilled red in the
Yes.
summertime. I'm a big fan of a Chavarri. And actually it works beautifully with fish. If a later evening, kind of trying to like ground yourself a bit more. I find white wine tends to send me off into the atmosphere, whereas red wine can bring me back down to earth a little bit.
So you'd be looking at a great variety called Gamay, or
Yeah,
if it was a Beaujolais Cru like Fleury, which is very nice at the end of the evening. But a Pinot Noir from California, perhaps.
Yeah, nice. I feel like that could work with fish and chips. It's not a very Californian thing, but it tracks.
Or there's another great variety called Pickpool, which you see it goes to the blend of Chateauneuf de Pape. And this produces quite a tart red wine, so cranberry character. That's the sort of...
That's something I've noticed on a lot more menus recently. That seems to be growing in popularity around.
This is such a sort of classic British meal, isn't it? It's mentioned in Oliver Twist. It was something that Thomas Jefferson commented on when he came over to London in the 18th century. It's sort of always been there. And obviously, it's just this sort of big British classic dish. So it was one of Winston Churchill's favourites. He called them fish and chips the good companions. And it was actually one of very few foods that wasn't rationed during World War II. Yeah, just because the government viewed it as so key to morale. It's quite a remarkable thing. And I suppose that it's not exactly resource intensive either.
A bit like when Boris Johnson he put wine on the essential list during lockdown. It was good for morale. But obviously the price of fish has gone up. So how much did you pay for these fish and chips today?
I don't think you're going to like the answers to this. It was not cheap. It was about... So what have we got? We got 2 lots of cod. We got 2 lots of chips, a couple of mushy peas. And we did briefly have a sausage.
Yeah.
But
Seagull then.
the seagull has got away with our sausage. And so it cost me about 40 quid in total, which is quite
It's a lot.
substantial. That's, if you're trying to feed a family of 4 or 5 on that, suddenly you're into quite an expensive day out.
Yeah. Well, as you were saying, Sophie, there are a lot of costs that you do have to pass on. It's not that everyone's profiteering.
No, not at all. And the fluctuation in costs of fish prices and things at the moment is enormous. So it's a tricky one to navigate.
And then you've got energy, rents, rate, staff, top.
If you're paying your staff well.
And the big criticism that British food always gets is, it's just sort of big beige hunks of things. And I'm always a bit grumpy about that because, looking at it now, that is quite a big beige hunk of thing, isn't it? How do we answer that criticism?
Beige things get a bad rep. There's nothing wrong with a beige thing. I think we need to embrace it.
I think the criticism I would have is the size of the portions. So I don't think we're a country that actually has big portions. But when it comes to fish and chips, they just shovel
Enormous.
in. Why?
Piece
There's
of
no
fish
meat, is there? Just shovel in there.
Yeah, true. I suppose you've got huge economies of scale with fish and chips because it's so cheap to add an extra potato.
Yeah.
And maybe you're making people feel like they're getting a really good deal.
Money.
They'll be coming back.
Or maybe it just stems from the Industrial Revolution. As people working in factories, everyone was doing manual jobs and were hungry, exactly.
You want a huge
And
amount.
didn't know when your next bill
Yeah, I guarantee you, if you put a plate of fish and chips down in front of a bunch of hungry chefs at 5 o'clock in the evening, they will happily have a large portion. Yeah. So maybe it's to do with how much physical exertion you're doing.
Maybe we've revealed ourselves.
I mean, certainly it's Mitch Tonks that down in Devon has a rockfish chain.
Oh, yeah.
And they do a very good fish and chips, dare I say it, in a restaurant. But you can get unlimited chips. But they're the sort of, they're very rich.
Yes, I've always thought these unlimited chip deals, and sometimes you get it on unlimited pita breads or something like that. It's an incredible hustle on behalf of the restaurants because no one is going to be ordering more than one portion of chips.
How do we feel about adjustments to your basic fish and chips? I'm not sure. I'm on board.
I'm pretty sort of, I don't know what you call it, pretty Catholic about the classic. So I would have curry sauce, mushy peas, and tartar sauce, and ketchup, and mayo all on it at once.
Everyone that comes to visit me in Brighton, especially from abroad, first thing they want to do, go and get some fish and
Okay,
chips.
the ship.
And it always surprises me how many people are like, I want to go get fish and chips. I'm like, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. But
What would you say is sort of the percentage in Brighton of really good fish and chips to a bit of a tourist trap? Because I feel like a lot of seaside towns you go to, it's quite risky.
I guess I think for me, because I quite like just your quite simple fish and chips and I don't need it to be particularly fancy or anything different, I think most of them you can find are pretty decent.
Yeah.
And they'll do what you need them to do, which is your soggy chips with lots of vinegar and salt, which is that's the bit that I'm always my favourite anyway. So I think there is also there are some really cool, slightly newer places opening up, looking at kind of trying to be more sustainable with their fish that they're buying.
But hasn't the cost of fish gone up so much?
Huge
The big issue now is the cost of fish and chips. I mean, I remember when it was, £7? And that was expensive.
Yeah.
Now
Lots of products have gone up a lot, and also the fluctuation on them is massive at the moment.
Yeah.
You see sort of these massive fluctuations in prices, which makes it very difficult for anyone to be able to strategise about what they want to charge.
Yeah.
So the cost sits quite high normally.
Yeah, no.
You see
And you've
that.
got energy costs. Yeah. Well, when I finish this chip, I think it might be time for our third bite.
Yes. I'm excited about this one. I think this has got a lot of promise.
Yeah, good.
So perhaps the most food-friendly wine out there is sherry. It's also the most underrated, good value. It's the wine that sommeliers, wine critics, wine merchants, chefs, restaurant wine critics, it's the insider's choice. And it's unfathomable why it's not more fashionable. But we're not talking about sweet sherry. Whenever you talk of sherry, you think of tweedy professors in the combination room at Cambridge, or
Little old ladies.
little old ladies with a thimbleful at Christmas.
Great
and it's-
cards.
Great cards.
My nana is a sherry fan.
No, we're talking about the sort of the dry Fino and Manzanilla, this white wine that's made, fortified wine, that's made on the sort of scorched vineyards of southwest Spain. And I'm a huge fan of fish and chips. And the key thing I think about dry sherry is, I don't know why, well, I do know why, but the sort of second thing you think of a sherry is cold winter days, don't you, I suppose? You've been warming up, you'd have it at Christmas time. It's the ideal summer drink.
Summer.
Comes in half bottle. A half bottle is perfect for two people
Yeah.
to spin out over the evening. Okay, it's not light in alcohol. That's 15.5. But it's a wine, I think, why chefs love it.
It's that smell, isn't it?
It's such a nostalgic thing, will be interestingly, like it takes you to so many places.
So it's one of the only white wines that's not defined by fruit. This is defined by its savoury, yeasty, umami flavour. And what we're smelling there is that bready, it's like cooked bread, isn't it? Or walking into a winery where you can smell it. And if you like Marmite, you know, you see the characters. And then it's very, very dry. So the two driest styles are Fino and Manzanilla. That's what you want. And also it's so reliable. You could go into your local corner shop and buy this, and it will taste great. And it will be under £20. Easy under £20.
Yeah.
You get some.
Yeah. I'm going to have some of that with the
fish.
I think that's with the fish, and then with the cheese, because I feel like the kind of yeastiness there is going to cut through that greasiness so delightfully.
Oh,
My favourite combination so far.
This is really good. And it's that briny character, isn't it? It works so well. In fact, you could discount the other two.
great.
They were great, but this is the winner. It's such a clear winner, isn't it?
That's it. That's my next evening on the beach plan.
Yeah.
Just a sherry and some fish and chips.
I think this is the non-vintage Delicado Fino sherry from Jerez, made by Gonzalez Baixas. What I love about it, it's a small bottle, so you can sort of stick it in the bag, go for a swim, bury it in the beach.
Get it in the sea,
Yeah.
chill it down.
And this is a wine that you can't drink quickly because it's so strong. You do want to sit. And it's strong in terms of alcohol, but also flavour.
Yeah.
And that rich texture.
Yeah. And would it keep for longer?
Yeah.
Once it's been
Oh,
opened
yeah.
first?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have one open in the fridge all throughout the summer. So does our editor.
Put that in your food. The cooking the absolute. Any kind of sauces, a chicken sauce with some sherry is one of my favourite things.
And you can imagine this with a soup. You do soups at Bar Pia at Knots.
Yeah. It could be great with soup, actually. I never really think to sort of... Soup is such a lunch... Yeah, but with a good broth. With a sort of like quite meaty broth, like a pot au feu or something like that, where you've got that really like bony flavour and the kind of fat fat in there.
I've always wanted to pairing sushi or kind of ramen with sherry, which obviously
great.
never
With sort of pork fat in your ramen with the sherry. It's not very popular, and people don't ever think to drink it.
You're completely right that sherry is kind of unpopular. People do associate it with your great aunt, but I think the tide is turning somewhat in that there are all these kind of slightly higher end Spanish tapas restaurants opening in the UK, somewhere like Brindisa, and also places like Morro and Morito, the sort of North African and Mediterranean, Southern Mediterranean restaurant, and they all have sherry, and they all do food that's very good with sherry because it's from the place where sherry is from. And I think people are sort of starting to get the idea that this can be very dry and very good. I've been to a few sort of fashionable wine bars where they have got a good sherry on the menu.
I shouldn't be disrespectful because I think you're absolutely right. But Sophie, when is the point where anything is very fashionable with chefs and critics, and then it breaks through the mainstream?
Yeah.
And that's what sherry hasn't done.
Yes.
And I wonder if there is a tipping point. And what would be an example of something that has?
I mean, the thing is that restaurants are often leading the way, and bars are leading the way in what is seen to be popular. And there's such a cult of sort of celebrity around chefs and restaurants and like cocteleros and all of that. So that does tend to eventually influence what's happening. And the Spanish food is definitely, it's been having a very long moment, to be fair, especially in London.
I find it great, actually. I've seen a lot of Albariño, like, even just on pub menus now, which would not have been the case 2-3 years ago.
Spain is. I mean, you've just come back from Spain. Spain is booming.
Yeah.
And it's going, in terms of wine, through this wonderful renaissance.
Well, we've got them all the 3 wines in front of us now. And usually we'd sort of talk about which one we think goes best. I think I know what your answer is going to be.
I actually think probably if I was speaking from a purely sort of intellectual place, I'd say the sparkling actually pairs the best. But just on a really personal level, I would go for the sherry every time, just because it's delicious.
I think you're right, Sophie, in that all of these wines pair brilliant with fish and chips. So if you go for fish and chips, you want a white wine, high in acidity, lots of, lovely, delicious fruit. But with you, my personal preference is probably for the sherry. But it is very nice to have something crisp and fast.
Yeah, it's quite nice. It feels a little bit special.
It does, yeah.
I think you're right. I think the Albariño, for me, is the one that's best with the mushy peas. There's something about the sort of sweetness and the brightness there that's quite nice. But yeah, well, same conclusion as you both, I think. Personally, the sherry, actually, it's probably the sparkling wine.
We're going to finish off some sherry and jump in the sea.
So,
I think in the spirit of being by the seaside, I bought my swimming trunk.
Yes, I have not.
I was going to go to a dip in the sea to burn off all of this, and then I'd like to go out and have a glass of sherry.
I'm going to stay here with the sherry because I'm not completely and utterly insane.
Well, I thought it would be a bit sunnier, but
Well, thank you so much, Sophie Taverner, for joining us at the Seaside today. Really delightful to have you with us. If people are looking to experience some of your lovely food, lovely wine, where can they go to?
So we're actually going to be doing a series of wine dinners. We've done the first 2 already, but Shoreline Store and Kitchens, you can go over there and book. The next month is going to be Italian wines with an Italian-inspired menu. So you can find us there, Shoreline Store. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, and we must say thank you to all the lovely folk here at Sea Lanes in Brighton, and a very special thank you to Andy White, who set this whole thing up, former Newquay Player of the Year. Right, shall we trunk song? Last one in, pastry ice cream?
Absolutely not happening.
Yeah, that is not happening. I think, Sophie, you and I stay here, finish off the wine, and we'll
do some damage to this sherry.
Yeah, but which is just so...
No.
Almost has a marathon.
No,
I'm definitely in the sea.
Cheers. Thank you, Sophie.
Cheers.
Cheers.